You guys know that I hate gimbals. They're time consuming, you have to set them up, you have to calibrate them, you have extra batteries that you gotta charge, but this one is a little bit different. This right here is a Scorp 2 by Tech. This gimbal has AI tracking, it's light, it's easy to set up, and most importantly, it allows me to get the stable shots that I need. By far, one of the coolest features that this particular gimbal has is the innovative AI tracking system that works very well. Now, what is AI mode? All you have to do is give the OK sign, and it basically follows you and tracks you anywhere you want. And this is incredible because if you're alone and you're shooting something and maybe you want to set up a second camera, you can easily set this thing up, prop this up, and be able to track somebody while you focus in on getting the tight shots. The other really awesome thing that you could do with something like this is, like we're doing right now, I'm setting this up as like, capturing me for YouTube content. If I want to talk to camera and I want to move left or right, this can easily do that. So that's an extremely usable feature. This gimbal comes with everything that you would expect from a high-end gimbal. It comes with its own carrying case. It has an LED touchscreen, a solid handle, scroll wheels on the front, and a joystick on the main handle, a shutter button, and a mode button. Now, in terms of quality, it does feel like a solid build, but whether or not this will stand the test of time, I can't really tell you guys because I've only been using it for a couple of weeks now. But so far, it feels pretty solid and like something that you would expect from one of the higher end gimbal makers like DJI or Zhiyun. Overall, it's really lightweight and pretty small. In fact, it was a lot smaller than I even thought, and it weighed a lot less than I thought as well, which can be a good thing and also a bad thing. Obviously, it's great because you can really hold this thing up, especially with like just a little FX3. You can really hold this up all day long. Now, what's probably not so great about it is because it's so small and so lightweight, I don't think it can handle, some of those bigger payloads that you'd expect from some of the other gimbals. But with all that being said, with my FX3 and my 24-70 G Master lens, it's worked perfectly. And I could definitely see that if you start throwing heavier lenses on this, especially like cinema lenses, it might not work as well, and you might run into a little bit of trouble setting it up. But so far with, like I said, my G Master lens and my Sony FX3, it's worked great. The one thing that I noticed about this gimbal is that it's very quick to set up. Don't get me wrong, like it takes a little minute to learn it and figure out exactly what to do. But once you get the hang of it, I could set this up in about 5 to 15 minutes. And I gotta say, one of the biggest reasons why I hate using gimbals is because of the long setup time and all the different, pieces of equipment and little tedious things that you have to use to set this gimbal up. But this particular gimbal, I was able to get up and running, like I said, in under 15 minutes. Now, let's quickly take a second and talk about the performance of the gimbal. Just like with any piece of gear, there is a bit of a learning curve, and you have to understand how to use this thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that you could just throw your camera up and start shooting right away. You got to kind of learn it a little bit, and just like with any gimbal, it takes a little bit getting used to and figuring out how it moves and maybe setting up some custom settings and stuff like that. But for the most part, it took me a couple of times of using it to where I really started getting the hang of it and was getting really good usable shots. During my shoot with this fighter, there was only a couple of times where I had to actually stop and reset the gimbal, but for the most part, it was really quick to get up and running. And I don't know about you guys, but I've dealt with a lot of gimbals in the past where they kind of, they'll catch a moment where they just start flipping around and doing this weird, motion thing. And this one really didn't do that. It did it like one time, and all I had to do was quickly press the trigger button a couple of times, and it reset right away, and it was good to go. Now, with all that being said, I will say before you go out and shoot, really spend some time making sure that this thing is balanced, because when it's really well balanced, it works great. When it's off balance and you guys don't balance it right, it's going to give you some issues. So just make sure that you take a minute and you really balance it right. Now, what's cool about this gimbal is that it has all the different modes to get almost every shot that you could possibly think of, which is really cool. It has pan follow mode, where the pan axis rotates following the direction of the motion, while the tilt axis and roll axis do not. It has pan tilt follow mode, where the pan and tilt axis rotate in accordance with the direction of motion while your roll axis does not move. Then of course you have lock mode, and in lock mode, all three axes do not move and the camera remains still at the current angle. It has FPV mode, where the pan axis and roll axis all rotate in accordance with the direction of motion. And then they even have fast FPV mode, which is just like regular FPV mode, only this time with a lot quicker of a reaction, which is great for capturing sports content. As you guys can see in some of these shots, the performance of the gimbal is pretty good, and I was able to get really smooth and stable shots pretty easily. All right, so one really cool feature on this is if you hit the F1 button twice, what it does is it goes into vertical mode. And for anybody who is shooting social media content, this is incredible because you can go right into shooting social vertical content, and then boom, when you're ready to go into horizontal mode, back to horizontal, you wanna shoot for YouTube again, you wanna shoot for your film again. But if you want that quick little, boom, social media content, boom, social media content, back to that. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, now back to movie mode. I'm gonna call it movie mode and social media content mode. Now the cost of this gimbal was one of the main reasons why I decided to buy it, coming in at a cost of only $369. With all of these features packed into this little gimbal, I thought it was a steal. And right now you guys can get 10% off with my discount code in the description down below. Overall, I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of gimbals, but for what this gimbal is able to achieve and what I need it for, it's perfect. Now, I don't think that you could rig this whole thing out, and like I said before, I don't think the payload is that great. So if you guys are planning to put add more rig components or make this into like a cinema rig, I don't think you could do anything like that. I think you have to keep it real small, real simple, something like an FX3 or maybe like a Canon R6 on this thing with like a lighter end lens is probably perfect. But that is the only con that I would say about this gimbal to me. For the price, I think it's a great bang for your buck, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. I want to say thank you guys so much for stopping in and hanging out, and I'll see you guys next week. Deuces.